A flight to remember. Owen Carter strode through the bustling airport terminal, his polished leather shoes clicking sharply against the tiled floor. The weight of impending doom hung over him like a storm cloud. His construction firm, Carter Constructions, was on the verge of bankruptcy, and today's flight marked the start of a desperate bid to save it. The orphanage project wasn't just another deal. It was a lifeline. Yet, to Owen, it was little more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Children, homes, or charity meant nothing compared to his bottom line. His sharp gray suit and perfectly knotted tie screamed confidence, but internally, Owen felt the pressure. 20 years of grueling work, sacrifices, and sleepless nights had built his company, and the thought of losing it all was unbearable. Failure, he muttered under his breath, shaking his head as if to dispel the word from existence. The flight announcement blared overhead, jolting him from his thoughts. Final boarding call for Flight 529 to Denver. Grabbing his sleek black briefcase, Owen moved briskly toward the gate, his face set in a mask of indifference. The gate agents greeted him with a polite smile, which he ignored. He was too absorbed in mentally rehearsing his presentation. State-of-the-art facilities, cost-effective solutions, proven expertise, he thought, cycling through his pitch like a mantra. The irony that his company's survival depended on a project to house orphan children didn't escape him. But to Owen, irony was a luxury he couldn't afford to dwell on. The jet bridge smelled faintly of jet fuel and stale air, a scent that Owen barely noticed as he boarded the plane. His seat was in first class, a luxury he justified as essential for networking. He took his spot by the window, adjusting his laptop bag beneath the seat in front of him. His plan was simple: tweak his presentation during the flight, nail the meeting, and secure the deal. The cabin filled quickly with passengers of all walks of life. Families with crying toddlers, harried businessmen, and solo travelers shuffled past him, cramming their carry-ons into the overhead bins. Owen's lip curled slightly as he watched a young mother struggle with her luggage while keeping an eye on her squirming child. Amateurs, he muttered under his breath, turning his attention back to his laptop. Across the aisle, in economy class, 12-year-old Jaden Harris nervously adjusted the strap of his backpack. It was his first time flying alone, and despite his mother's reassuring words, he couldn't shake the unease gnawing at his stomach. His seatmate, an older woman with kind eyes and silver hair, noticed his fidgeting. "First time flying?" she asked with a gentle smile. Jaden nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, my mom said I'd be okay, but..." "You'll do just fine," the woman said warmly. "I've been flying for decades, and let me tell you a little secret. It's perfectly normal to feel nervous. Brave boys like you get through it just fine." Jaden managed a small smile, comforted by her words. Still, the noise and chaos around him felt overwhelming. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wished his mom were there to hold his hand. Back in first class, Owen pulled up his presentation on his laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated his face as he fine-tuned profit margins and construction timelines. He was so engrossed in his work that he barely noticed when the flight attendant asked him to stow his device for takeoff. "Sir, your laptop," the attendant repeated, her voice tinged with exasperation. Owen sighed and snapped the lid shut. "Fine," he muttered, leaning back in his seat. His mind raced with figures and projections. The sooner this flight was over, the sooner he could land the deal and secure his future. As the plane roared down the runway and lifted into the air, Jaden clutched the armrest of his seat, his knuckles turning white. The older woman placed a reassuring hand on his arm, steadying him through the turbulence of takeoff. "You're safe, sweetheart," she said. "Just breathe." Jaden nodded, trying to focus on the rhythmic hum of the engines rather than the knot of fear in his chest. Once the seatbelt sign turned off, Jaden worked up the courage to ask the flight attendant for a glass of water. His seatmate encouraged him with a nod, and he made his way carefully down the aisle, gripping the seatbacks for balance. As he returned, Clutching the plastic cup with both hands, the plane hit a sudden patch of turbulence. Jaden stumbled, the water splashing out and landing squarely on Owen's pristine suit jacket. Owen's reaction was instantaneous and venomous. He shot out of his seat, towering over the boy with a face contorted in anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snapped. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Jaden froze, his eyes wide with fear. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice trembling. "It was an accident." "Accident? You're just like the rest of them," Owen spat, his voice rising. "Clumsy, careless, and—" He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a hateful sneer. "Worthless." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Nearby passengers exchanged shocked glances, but no one spoke. Jaden's face crumpled as tears welled in his eyes. He opened his mouth to apologize again, but no words came out. Before Owen could continue his tirade, a calm yet commanding voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me," said a woman standing a few rows back. Her tone was firm, her presence unshakable. She was tall and impeccably dressed, her dark brown skin glowing under the cabin lights. Her piercing gaze locked onto Owen like a hawk spotting its prey. Owen turned to face her, his anger momentarily giving way to confusion. "Who the hell are you?" he snapped. The woman stepped closer, her voice steady and authoritative. "I'm the person who's about to teach you some manners," she said. Her eyes flicked to Jaden, who was trembling and clutching his empty cup. "Let go of the boy." Owen scoffed. "And what if I don't?" "Then you'll regret it," she said simply. Her tone left no room for argument. The cabin was silent now, every passenger's eyes fixed on the unfolding confrontation. Owen hesitated, his grip on Jaden's arm loosening. Sensing an opportunity, Jaden quickly pulled away and darted back to his seat, where the older woman welcomed him with open arms. Owen glared at the mysterious woman, his fists clenched. "This is none of your business." "It became my business the moment you decided to humiliate a child for an accident," she replied. "Now I suggest you take your seat and reflect on your behavior before you embarrass yourself further." For a moment, Owen looked as though he might argue, but something in her unwavering gaze made him falter. Grumbling under his breath, he returned to his seat, his anger simmering but contained. The woman gave Jaden a reassuring nod before returning to her own seat. The tension in the cabin slowly dissipated, but the incident lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. For Owen, the confrontation was an inconvenience, a momentary blip in his meticulously planned day. Little did he know, the woman who had stood up to him was not just another passenger. She was someone far more influential than he could ever imagine, a fact that would soon become painfully clear. Shadows of authority. The tension in the cabin lingered like the dull hum of the engines, and Owen Carter sat rigidly in his seat, fuming. His suit, damp and stained, was a stark reminder of the indignity he had suffered, or so he thought. He tugged at his cuffs, his lips pressed into a thin line, unwilling to meet the judgmental stares of the other passengers. Across the aisle, Jaden Harris wiped his eyes, his small hands trembling as he gripped the chocolate bar given to him by his seatmate. Mrs. Evelyn Harper, the elderly woman beside him, leaned in closer, whispering words of comfort. The boy nodded weakly, though his posture remained stiff, his nerves still frayed from the ordeal. The woman who had intervened, confident, commanding, and unyielding, sat a few rows behind Owen. Her calm demeanor belied the fire in her gaze as she watched him. She appeared uninterested, yet there was a deliberate sharpness to her every glance in his direction, like a predator sizing up its prey. Owen could feel her eyes on him even when he refused to turn around. To drown out his irritation, he powered on his laptop, determined to salvage his day by reviewing his presentation once more. Numbers and charts filled the screen, and for a brief moment, he lost himself in the calculations. Profits, projections, savings. This was the world he understood, far removed from the complexities of humanity and empathy. But as his fingers flew across the keyboard, his mind kept wandering back to the woman. There was something unsettling about her. It wasn't just her boldness in confronting him. It was the quiet authority she carried, the way the cabin had fallen silent in deference to her. Who was she? And why had she interfered? The flight dragged on, turbulence jostling the passengers intermittently. Flight attendants moved up and down the aisles, offering refreshments and reassuring nervous flyers. Owen ignored them, his focus shifting between his laptop and the window, where endless clouds rolled past. Meanwhile, Jaden remained quiet, staring at his hands. His seatmate, Mrs. Harper, encouraged him to relax. "Sweetheart, don't let that man's words linger in your heart," she said softly, her voice carrying the wisdom of years. "Some people carry ugliness inside them, and they try to spread it to others. Don't let them." Jaden nodded but remained silent, his mind replaying the moment Owen had towered over him, his face twisted with rage. He swallowed hard, gripping the armrest as the plane swayed again. The woman behind Owen, later identified as Amina Lawson, watched the scene quietly. Amina was no ordinary passenger. Her aura of power came from years of commanding boardrooms, negotiating multi-million-dollar deals, and more importantly, standing as an advocate for those who had no voice. She wasn't just wealthy. She was influential, a force to be reckoned with in both business and philanthropy. Unbeknownst to Owen, her presence on the flight wasn't coincidental. As the plane began its descent, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our approach into Denver. Please return to your seats and ensure your seatbelts are fastened." Owen closed his laptop, stuffing it back into his bag. His thoughts had finally shifted away from the earlier confrontation and back to the meeting awaiting him. He straightened his tie, brushed his jacket, and ignored the damp patch on his sleeve. The orphanage deal would secure his future, and nothing else mattered. Not a rude boy, not an interfering woman, and certainly not the silent judgment of his fellow passengers. As the plane touched down with a slight jolt, Owen allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Finally, he thought, he was one step closer to sealing the deal and saving his company. The terminal buzzed with activity as passengers disembarked. Families reunited, travelers hurried to their connections, and others milled about, searching for baggage claim or ground transportation. Owen walked briskly toward the exit, eager to get to his hotel and prepare for his meeting. He barely registered Jaden being escorted by an airport attendant toward the unaccompanied minor service desk. Amina, however, moved with purpose. Her posture remained relaxed, but her keen eyes scanned the terminal, observing Owen's every move. She pulled out her phone, typing a quick message before tucking it back into her handbag. Owen's hotel was a short ride away, a luxurious high-rise in downtown Denver. The glossy marble floors and towering glass walls exuded opulence, a fitting backdrop for his ambitions. He checked in, exchanged polite pleasantries with the concierge, and ascended to his suite on the 18th floor. Inside, he set his briefcase on the desk and pulled out his laptop. The sprawling city skyline stretched before him through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but Owen barely glanced at it. His mind was fixed on the meeting scheduled for the next morning with Sterling Enterprises, the firm financing the orphanage project. If he impressed them, Carter Constructions would secure a multi-million-dollar contract, effectively pulling his company back from the brink of financial ruin. As he worked late into the night, fine-tuning his presentation, his phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Sterling Enterprises, confirming the details of the meeting. The sender's name caught his attention. Amina Lawson. His heart skipped a beat. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Curiosity gnawed at him, and he opened a new browser tab, typing her name into the search bar. The results flooded the screen, and Owen's blood ran cold. Amina Lawson wasn't just a business executive. She was the CEO of Sterling Enterprises. She was one of the wealthiest and most influential women in the country, known for her philanthropic endeavors and her unyielding stance against injustice. Her name appeared in headlines alongside world leaders, tech moguls, and humanitarian organizations. And then it clicked. The woman on the plane. Owen's stomach churned as he scrolled through articles and photos, each one painting a picture of a powerful, respected figure. The memory of their confrontation came rushing back, and for the first time, he felt a pang of unease. Had she recognized him? Did she know about his behavior toward Jaden? Shaking his head, Owen dismissed the thought. It was impossible. Sterling Enterprises was a massive conglomerate. There was no way she would connect him to a single moment on a random flight. Still, the thought lingered, gnawing at his confidence. The next morning, Owen arrived at the Sterling Enterprises headquarters early, his nerves hidden beneath a mask of professionalism. The building was a masterpiece of modern architecture, its sleek design a testament to the company's success. The receptionist greeted him with a polite smile and directed him to the 20th floor, where the meeting was to take place. As the elevator doors opened, Owen stepped into a conference room that exuded power and prestige. Large windows bathed the space in natural light, and the polished table gleamed under the glow of pendant lights. Seated at the head of the table was Amina Lawson. Owen froze for a split second before regaining his composure. He plastered a smile on his face and extended his hand as he approached her. "Ms. Lawson," he said smoothly, "it's a pleasure to meet you." Amina regarded him with an inscrutable expression. Her handshake was firm, her gaze unwavering. "Mr. Carter," she said evenly, "welcome. Let's get started." As the meeting progressed, Owen delivered his pitch with practiced ease, his confidence growing with each slide. He highlighted Carter Construction's track record, their innovative designs, and their ability to deliver projects on time and within budget. The other executives in the room nodded approvingly, their expressions encouraging. But Amina remained silent, her face unreadable. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled as she watched Owen. Her silence unnerved him, but he pressed on, determined to impress. When he finished, the room erupted into polite applause. Owen allowed himself a small smile, confident that he had nailed the presentation. Then Amina spoke. "Thank you, Mr. Carter," she said, her tone measured. "Your proposal is impressive. But before we proceed, I'd like to address a matter of personal concern." Owen's smile faltered. "Of course," he said hesitantly. Amina's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, her calm exterior cracked, revealing a glint of steel beneath. "Let's discuss what happened on Flight 529, she said. "A reckoning in progress." Owen felt a jolt of panic as the words settled in the room like an oppressive fog. The sterile, professional atmosphere of the Sterling Enterprises boardroom suddenly felt suffocating. His heart raced, but he kept his face neutral, masking his anxiety with a polite tilt of his head. "Flight 529. Owen asked, feigning ignorance. "I'm not sure I follow." Amina Lawson leaned forward slightly, her calm demeanor sharp as a blade. "Don't insult my intelligence, Mr. Carter. You know exactly what I'm talking about." The executives seated around the table exchanged curious glances, sensing the sudden shift in tone. Owen, now visibly uneasy, adjusted his tie and glanced at the other faces in the room, hoping for an ally. None of them dared meet his gaze. I don't see how that's relevant," Owen stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. "This is about the orphanage project, isn't it? My proposal clearly demonstrates." Amina held up a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "It's very relevant, Mr. Carter. Sterling Enterprises doesn't just invest in projects. We invest in people. Integrity, compassion, and respect are non-negotiable values in our partnerships. What I witnessed on that flight calls into question whether you embody those values." Owen's cheeks flushed with a mix of anger and embarrassment. "With all due respect, Ms. Lawson, I believe my professional qualifications speak for themselves. Whatever happened on that flight is being blown out of proportion." Amina's eyes narrowed, and her voice took on a steely edge. "Blown out of proportion. You humiliated a child, Mr. Carter. You grabbed his arm, insulted him, and belittled him for something as trivial as a spilled cup of water. That boy, Jaden, was scared, alone, and trying his best, and you chose to respond with cruelty. Owen opened his mouth to argue but found himself at a loss for words. The memory of Jaden's tearful face flashed in his mind, but he shoved it aside, clinging to his defense. "It was a stressful moment," he muttered. "I may have overreacted, but I hardly think it warrants this level of scrutiny." Amina didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled her phone from the table and tapped the screen a few times. Turning it around, she revealed a short video clip. It was unmistakably from Flight 529. Someone had recorded the incident, the harsh words, the racial slur, Jaden's trembling form, and the moment Amina herself intervened. The audio was clear, the visuals damning. Owen's stomach dropped. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. "The same way everyone else will get it if I decide to release it," Amina replied evenly. "You see, Mr. Carter, your behavior isn't just a private failing. It's a public one. And I refuse to let someone like you represent this company or have any connection to a project that is supposed to serve vulnerable children." The air in the room felt electric. Owen looked around desperately, but the other executives sat in stunned silence, unwilling to intervene. He was on his own, facing down a woman who clearly held all the power. "Ms. Lawson," he began, his voice shaky but pleading, "please, let's not escalate this. My company is in a fragile position. This project means everything to us, to me. I'll do whatever it takes to make amends. Apologies, donations, name your terms." Amina studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "This isn't about money, Mr. Carter. It's about character. Do you truly believe a forced apology or a token donation will erase what you did, the damage you caused to that boy?" Owen fell silent, his mouth dry. The answer was painfully obvious. A turning point. The room remained tense as Amina rose from her seat and walked to the large windows overlooking the city. For a moment, she stood there, her back to the room, the sunlight casting her silhouette in stark relief. Then she turned, her voice softer but no less firm. "Here's what I'll do, Mr. Carter. I'll give you one chance, one opportunity to demonstrate that you're capable of change, that you can confront your prejudice and learn from this. But it won't be easy, and it won't be immediate." Owen blinked, a spark of hope igniting within him. "Anything. I'll do anything," he said quickly, his tone desperate. Amina raised a hand to silence him again. "For the next 6 months, you will dedicate your time and resources to causes that align with the spirit of this project. You will work directly with children like Jaden, and you will do so without expecting anything in return. I want reports, documentation, and most importantly, testimonials from the people you help." She paused, her gaze piercing. "If you succeed, I'll consider your proposal for this project. If you fail, or if I hear even the slightest whisper of behavior like what I saw on that plane, our business relationship ends here, and I won't hesitate to make that video public." Owen swallowed hard, his mind racing. The terms were humiliating, but he had no choice. Without this project, Carter Constructions was doomed, and if the video went viral, his reputation and his career would be over. "I agree," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Amina nodded. "Good. You'll receive detailed instructions by the end of the day. Don't make me regret giving you this chance." With that, the meeting concluded. Amina left the room without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. The other executives followed suit, leaving Owen alone in the conference room, his head in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of something far heavier than financial ruin. It was the weight of accountability, pressing down on him like an anchor. Outside the Sterling Enterprises building, Jaden Harris stood with his mother, who had just picked him up from the airport. The boy's face lit up as Amina approached them. "Ms. Lawson," Jaden exclaimed, running up to her. She crouched to his level, smiling warmly. "Hey there, Jaden," she said, her voice gentle. How are you feeling? Better, he said shyly, glancing at his mother. Thanks for helping me on the plane. Amina placed a hand on his shoulder. You're a brave young man, Jaden. Don't ever forget that. Jaden's mother smiled gratefully. Thank you for looking out for him. He told me everything. Amina straightened, her expression softening. It's the least I could do. People like Owen Carter need to be held accountable. And with any luck, he'll learn something from this. As she walked away, Amina felt a glimmer of hope. Change didn't come easily, but sometimes even the smallest seeds of growth could take root in the unlikeliest of places. Whether Owen would rise to the challenge remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. He would never forget the day he met Amina Lawson, or the lesson she taught him. Humbled beginnings. Owen Carter sat in his office, staring at the email from Sterling Enterprises. The message wasn't lengthy, but it carried the weight of a mountain. Amina Lawson's conditions were clear. 6 months of dedicated, hands-on work with underprivileged children, detailed progress reports, and proof of meaningful impact. Every fiber of his being bristled at the humiliation, but the stakes were too high to ignore. If he failed, it wasn't just his company that would collapse. It was his entire reputation. His assistant, Laura, knocked lightly before stepping inside. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, setting a coffee mug on his desk. Owen glanced at her, running a hand through his hair. It might be worse than that. I've been roped into some community service project, he muttered. Laura raised an eyebrow. Community service? That doesn't sound like you. It's not, he snapped, then sighed, softening his tone. Sorry. It's complicated. If I want to secure the Sterling deal, I have to spend 6 months working with kids. Kids? Laura asked, her tone light but curious. Like volunteering. Exactly, Owen said, his voice dripping with disdain. I'm supposed to mentor, teach, and whatever else it takes to convince Amina Lawson that I've learned some grand moral lesson. Laura crossed her arms, leaning against the desk. Well, maybe this could be a good thing. Owen shot her a look. Good? Do you know how much time this is going to take? I have a company to run, and maybe part of running a company is showing that you care about more than just the bottom line, Laura replied pointedly. Besides, you don't really have a choice, do you? Owen knew she was right. Begrudgingly, he opened the attachment in Amina's email, a list of local organizations that worked with underprivileged children. At the top of the list was Bright Futures Community Center, a nonprofit focused on after-school programs, mentorship, and life skills for at-risk youth. It seemed as good a place to start as any. The first day. Bright Futures was a modest building tucked into a busy urban neighborhood. The walls were painted with colorful murals, depicting smiling children, books, and hands joined together in unity. To Owen, it looked like chaos. As he walked through the front doors, a young woman with curly hair and a clipboard greeted him. Mr. Carter, she asked, smiling warmly. I'm Rachel, the program coordinator. Thanks for joining us today. Owen forced a polite smile. Of course. Happy to help, he lied. Rachel led him through the main hall, explaining the day's schedule. Today's group is a mix of ages, mostly between 10 and 14. They'll be working on a collaborative art project for the first hour, then moving on to tutoring. You'll be paired with a few kids who could use some one-on-one support. Owen nodded absently, his eyes scanning the room. Children ran back and forth, laughing, shouting, and generally making a racket. The smell of crayons and glue permeated the air, and the walls vibrated with energy. He already felt out of place. Here we are, Rachel said, stopping in a classroom filled with kids hunched over tables covered in paper, markers, and paint. This is your group. A boy with thick glasses and a shy smile waved hesitantly. Hi, he said softly. Beside him, a girl with a head full of braids was already sketching furiously, barely looking up. Hello, Owen replied awkwardly, lowering himself into a child-sized chair. The seat creaked under his weight, and he felt the eyes of the children around him. "So, what are we doing?" he asked, trying to sound enthusiastic. The boy pointed to a piece of paper in the center of the table. "We're drawing our dream places," he explained, "like where we'd want to live if we could go anywhere." Owen glanced at the paper. It was a mess of lines, shapes, and colors, all blending together into an abstract blur. "Interesting," he said, though he didn't mean it. The girl with the braids looked up for the first time, narrowing her eyes at him. "You don't like it, do you?" "What?" Owen stammered. No, it's great. Very creative." She rolled her eyes. "You don't gotta lie, mister. We know it's not Picasso or whatever." The boy giggled, and Owen felt a twinge of embarrassment. "Well, maybe you can teach me a thing or two," he said, trying to recover. "Maybe," the girl replied with a smirk, before turning back to her drawing. Lessons in patience. The next few hours tested Owen's patience in ways he hadn't anticipated. He found himself tutoring 2 boys on basic math, only to realize they had no interest in the subject whatsoever. They fidgeted, doodled on their notebooks, and whispered jokes to each other, leaving Owen exasperated. "Guys," he said, his tone sharp, "if you don't focus, you're not going to learn anything." One of the boys, a lanky kid named Marcus, looked up with a mischievous grin. "We're learning that you get mad real easy." Owen opened his mouth to respond but stopped himself. Arguing with a 12-year-old wasn't going to help. Instead, he took a deep breath and tried a different approach. "Okay, Marcus," he said. "How about this? If you can solve 3 problems correctly, I'll let you pick the next activity." Marcus's eyes lit up. "Anything within reason," Owen clarified. "Deal," Marcus said, suddenly more engaged. To Owen's surprise, the tactic worked. Marcus and his friend buckled down, solving the problems with surprising focus. When they finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair, grinning triumphantly. "Told ya we could do it." Owen couldn't help but smile. "You proved me wrong." Marcus puffed out his chest. "So, can we play basketball now?" Owen hesitated. He wasn't exactly dressed for sports, but a deal was a deal. "Fine," he said. "Let's go." A spark of connection. Out on the small, cracked basketball court behind the center, Owen found himself in unfamiliar territory. The kids were fast and agile, weaving around him with ease as they played. He quickly became the subject of their laughter, stumbling over his own feet and missing every shot he took. "Man, you're bad at this," Marcus shouted, doubling over with laughter. Owen couldn't help but laugh too. "Yeah, well, I'm not exactly NBA material." As the game continued, Owen began to relax. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about profit margins or deadlines. He was just playing, laughing, and connecting with the kids in a way he hadn't expected. By the time the game ended, Owen was sweating and out of breath, but he felt lighter somehow. The kids high-fived him, their earlier skepticism replaced with genuine smiles. The first step forward. As the day came to a close, Rachel approached Owen in the hallway. "You did well today," she said. "The kids seemed to warm up to you." "Thanks," Owen said, surprised by how much the words meant. "I wasn't sure how it would go." Rachel smiled. "It's not always easy, but it's worth it. You might find you're learning as much from them as they are from you." Owen nodded thoughtfully. As he walked to his car, he realized she was right. Today had been exhausting and humbling, but it had also been different. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something meaningful, even if it wasn't for the reasons he'd intended. As he started the engine and drove away, he couldn't help but wonder what the next 6 months would bring, and whether he was truly capable of the change Amina Lawson demanded. Cracks in the armor. The weeks following Owen's first day at Bright Futures were a whirlwind of frustration, awkwardness, and unexpected lessons. Each visit chipped away at the carefully constructed wall he had built around himself over the years. The more time he spent with the children, the more he realized how ill-equipped he was to navigate their world. A world full of struggles and triumphs he had never stopped to consider. A shaky start. Owen's mornings began earlier now. Instead of diving straight into spreadsheets and board meetings, he found himself driving to the community center, his mind juggling thoughts of his struggling company and the increasingly unpredictable demands of working with kids. At first, he viewed his time at Bright Futures as a means to an end. Each hour spent mentoring, tutoring, or simply listening felt like a box he needed to check off to secure Amina Lawson's approval. But the children had a way of disrupting his plans. One morning, as Owen walked into the art room, a cacophony of giggles greeted him. The kids were scattered around the room, drawing, cutting paper, and creating what could only be described as abstract masterpieces. In the center of the chaos sat Marcus, the lanky boy who had teased Owen mercilessly during their first encounter. Today, Marcus was wielding a pair of scissors with an alarming level of enthusiasm. "Hey, Mr. Carter," Marcus called, grinning ear to ear. "Want to help me make a robot?" Owen hesitated. "A robot?" "Yeah," Marcus said, holding up a cardboard box with wobbly arms made of duct tape and paper towel rolls. "He's gonna be awesome." Owen chuckled despite himself. "All right, let's see what you've got." For the next hour, Owen found himself knee-deep in glue sticks, foil, and colored paper. Marcus peppered him with questions about engineering, robotics, and whether robots could eventually take over the world. Owen, to his own surprise, enjoyed the conversation. By the time the robot was complete, it looked more like a patchwork monster than a high-tech machine, but Marcus was beaming. "This is the best robot ever," Marcus declared, holding it up triumphantly. Owen nodded, a genuine smile tugging at his lips. "It's unique. It's perfect," Marcus corrected, his pride unwavering. A glimpse into their lives. The more time Owen spent at the center, the more he began to learn about the kids' lives. These weren't just abstract stories of hardship. They were raw, personal realities that hit him harder than he expected. One afternoon, he sat with Tasha, the girl with the intricate braids who had challenged his sincerity on his first day. She was working on a college, her movements precise and deliberate. "What are you making?" Owen asked, genuinely curious. "Stuff I want in my life," Tasha said simply, not looking up. Owen leaned closer, studying the college. Among the cutout images were pictures of a big house, a happy family, and a girl holding a diploma. "That's a nice house," Owen said, pointing to one of the pictures. Tasha nodded. "Yeah, I'm gonna have one someday. Not like the place I live in now." Her tone was casual, but the weight of her words hung in the air. Owen didn't know what to say. He had spent his career building homes, but he had never considered what it felt like for someone to dream of something as basic as safety and comfort. "What about this?" Owen asked, pointing to the diploma. "That's for my mom," Tasha said, her voice softening. "She always wanted to go to college, but she couldn't. So I'm gonna go for both of us." Owen swallowed hard. "That's a great goal," he said, his voice tinged with newfound respect. For the rest of the day, Tasha worked quietly, her focus unwavering. And for the first time, Owen felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name, a mix of admiration and guilt. The breakthrough moment. Owen's progress wasn't without setbacks. Some of the kids were wary of him, sensing his initial reluctance to engage. But over time, cracks began to form in their defenses, and in his own. One pivotal moment came during a mentoring session with Jaden. The boy had been avoiding Owen since the incident on the plane, but Rachel paired them together intentionally, hoping to mend the fractured relationship. Jaden sat stiffly at the table, his hands folded in his lap. Owen cleared his throat, unsure of how to begin. "Jaden," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I know I hurt you on the plane." The boy's eyes flicked up, wide with surprise. Owen continued, the words coming slower now. "I was wrong about everything, and I want to make it right, if you'll let me." Jaden studied him for a long moment. "Why?" he asked finally. Why do you care now? Owen hesitated. He could feel the weight of the question pressing down on him. Why did he care? Was it because of Amina's ultimatum? Or was it because, in some small way, these kids were starting to matter to him? Because I was wrong, Owen said honestly, and I'm trying to be better. Jaden nodded slowly. Okay, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't forgiveness, not entirely, but it was a start, a shift in perspective. As the weeks turned into months, Owen began to notice changes in himself. His interactions with the kids were no longer just tasks to complete. They were moments he looked forward to. He started asking questions, listening more, and stepping out of his comfort zone. The kids, in turn, began to trust him more, opening up about their dreams, fears, and struggles. At home, Owen found himself reflecting on his own life. He thought about the privileges he had taken for granted, the opportunities he had overlooked, and the people he had dismissed. His once firm belief in the power of profit and success began to waver, replaced by a growing understanding of the importance of compassion and connection. The unexpected call. One evening, as Owen was preparing to leave the center, his phone buzzed. It was Amina Lawson. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice as calm and commanding as ever. "I've been following your progress." Owen's heart skipped a beat. "And?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness. "You're doing better than I expected," Amina admitted. "But this isn't about meeting my expectations. It's about what kind of person you're becoming. Do you think you've changed?" The question caught Owen off guard. He thought about Marcus's robot, Tasha's college, and Jaden's quiet acceptance. He thought about the laughter, the lessons, and the moments of clarity that had reshaped his understanding of the world. "I think I'm trying," he said finally. Amina was silent for a moment. "Good. Keep trying." The line went dead, leaving Owen alone with his thoughts. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name. Hope. Turning point. The sound of Amina Lawson's voice lingered in Owen's mind long after the call ended. Her question, "Do you think you've changed?" echoed like a challenge. For years, he had measured his success by profits and prestige, but now, for the first time, he felt the weight of an entirely different metric: character. He didn't sleep well that night. Instead, he lay awake, replaying the past few weeks in his mind. The kids, their struggles, their laughter, they had begun to stir something in him, something he couldn't fully articulate yet. He thought of Jaden's quiet resilience, Tasha's determination, and Marcus's boundless creativity. Slowly but surely, they were breaking through his defenses, forcing him to confront truths he had long ignored. The next challenge. The following week, Rachel approached Owen with a new task. The center was hosting a career day, and they wanted Owen to speak to the kids about his journey in the construction industry. Rachel's enthusiasm was palpable, but Owen hesitated. "Me? Speak to the kids?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "I don't think I'm the right person for that." Rachel tilted her head, her smile unwavering. "Why not? You've built a successful company. You have a lot to share." Owen sighed. "Most of these kids don't care about construction. They want to be artists, athletes, or scientists. I don't think they'd relate to what I have to say." Rachel placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice firm but kind. "It's not about construction, Owen. It's about showing them what's possible. Most of these kids have never met someone who's built something from the ground up, literally or figuratively. You could inspire them." Her words struck a chord. Owen reluctantly agreed, though the thought of standing in front of the kids filled him with dread. Preparing the speech. The night before career day, Owen sat at his dining table, a blank piece of paper in front of him. He had no idea where to begin. Should he talk about his company's early struggles, the long hours, the financial risks, the sleepless nights, or should he focus on the success, the skyscrapers, the accolades, the contracts worth millions? But as he thought about the kids, another question surfaced. What would they actually care about? He thought of Tasha, dreaming of a house she could call her own. He thought of Marcus, whose makeshift robot was a testament to his ingenuity. He thought of Jaden, whose quiet strength had begun to mirror his own. These kids didn't need to hear about his financial triumphs. They needed to hear about perseverance, resilience, and hope. For hours, he scribbled and crossed out lines, piecing together a story that felt authentic. By the time he went to bed, he still wasn't confident, but he was ready to try. Career Day. The community center buzzed with energy the next morning. Kids shuffled into the main hall, where a makeshift stage had been set up. Posters and decorations lined the walls, and a large banner overhead read, "Dream big, work hard, achieve greatness." Owen sat in the back, his palms sweating as he waited for his turn. Speakers from various professions took the stage one by one. A firefighter, a nurse, a local artist, and even a tech entrepreneur. Each one received enthusiastic applause, their stories resonating with the kids. Finally, it was Owen's turn. As his name was called, he rose from his seat, smoothing down his shirt and forcing a smile. The kids clapped politely, though a few looked skeptical. He climbed onto the stage and adjusted the microphone. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "My name is Owen Carter, and I build things for a living." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Owen cleared his throat and continued. "When I was your age, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't the smartest kid in my class, and I wasn't the best athlete, but I loved the idea of building something out of nothing. Whether it was forts in my backyard or models out of Lego, I liked the idea that I could create something with my own two hands." He paused, scanning the room. The kids were listening, their eyes fixed on him. "Fast forward a few years, and I started a construction company. It wasn't easy. There were times I wanted to quit, times when it felt like everything was falling apart. But I kept going, and eventually, things got better. Today, my company has built schools, hospitals, and homes all over the country." The kids clapped, but Owen held up a hand to quiet them. "But here's the thing," he said, his voice softening. "For a long time, I thought success was about how much money I made or how many buildings I constructed. I thought those things defined me. But over the past few weeks, I've learned something important. Real success isn't just about what you build. It's about who you help along the way." He glanced at Marcus, Tasha, and Jaden, who were sitting near the front. "All of you have dreams. Some of you want to be artists, some of you want to be engineers, and some of you just want a better life for your families. Whatever your dream is, don't let anyone tell you it's impossible. You're capable of more than you think." The room was silent for a moment, and then the applause began. It started slow but quickly grew into a standing ovation. Owen felt a lump in his throat as he stepped off the stage, his heart pounding. An unexpected moment. After the event, the kids swarmed the speakers, asking questions and snapping photos. Marcus approached Owen, holding a piece of paper. "Hey, Mr. Carter," he said, grinning. "Can you sign this? I want to remember your speech." Owen blinked in surprise but took the paper, scrawling his name across it. "You know, Marcus, you're the real builder here," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "That robot of yours is something special." Marcus beamed. "Thanks, Mr. Carter. Maybe I'll build real robots one day." "I don't doubt it," Owen said. Tasha joined them, holding her college. "Hey, Mr. Carter. Thanks for saying all that stuff. It made me think I could actually make my dreams happen." "You can, Tasha," Owen said, his voice firm. "You're one of the smartest, most determined people I've ever met. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She smiled shyly and walked away, leaving Owen standing with Jaden. The boy looked up at him, his eyes filled with something Owen hadn't seen before: trust. "You did good today," Jaden said simply. Owen crouched down to meet his gaze. "Thanks, Jaden. Coming from you, that means a lot." The boy nodded, his lips curving into a small smile. A step toward redemption. That evening, as Owen drove home, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not the shallow pride that came from closing a deal or outmaneuvering a competitor, but a deeper, more meaningful pride. For the first time, he felt like he was building something that truly mattered, not just for himself, but for others. As he pulled into his driveway, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Amina. "Keep going. You're starting to get it." Owen stared at the screen, a small smile spreading across his face. He still had a long way to go, but for the first time, he believed he could get there. The ripple effect. Weeks turned into months, and the 6-month deadline set by Amina Lawson loomed closer. For Owen Carter, the journey at Bright Futures had become more than just an obligation. What had started as a means to save his business was now reshaping the very fabric of his character. Each day at the center brought new challenges, moments of connection, and lessons that went far beyond the classroom or playground. An unexpected opportunity. One morning, Rachel, the program coordinator, approached Owen with a clipboard in hand and a look of excitement on her face. "Owen, I need to talk to you about something," she said, gesturing for him to follow her into the small office near the back of the center. Curious, Owen followed her. Inside, she handed him a packet of papers. "The city is hosting a Youth Innovation Fair next month," she explained. "It's a chance for kids from community centers like ours to showcase their ideas and talents. I think our kids would benefit so much from participating, but we need someone to lead the team." Owen blinked. "Lead the team? Me?" Rachel nodded. "You've built a great rapport with the kids, and you have the expertise to help them turn their ideas into something tangible. Plus, you've shown them that anything is possible with hard work. They trust you, Owen." For a moment, he hesitated. The idea of leading a team of kids at an innovation fair seemed daunting. His mind immediately filled with doubts. What if he failed? What if the kids' ideas weren't good enough? But then he thought of Marcus, Tasha, Jaden, and the others. He thought of how far they had come, how far he had come, and how much this opportunity could mean to them. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it." Rachel beamed. "I knew you'd say yes." Planting the seeds of innovation. That afternoon, Owen gathered the kids in the center's main hall and explained the opportunity. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Marcus jumped out of his seat, already shouting about building a super robot that can do your homework. Tasha suggested creating a mural that could be converted into digital art. Jaden, quieter than the rest, mentioned an idea for a recycling initiative. Over the next few weeks, the group worked tirelessly under Owen's guidance. His once formal demeanor softened as he rolled up his sleeves and dove into the projects alongside the kids. He spent hours teaching them about design, problem-solving, and teamwork. Marcus's robot idea turned into a functional prototype made of recycled materials, complete with moving arms powered by simple circuits. Tasha's mural became a vibrant depiction of their community's hopes and dreams, and with Owen's help, she turned it into an interactive art piece using augmented reality. Jaden's recycling initiative blossomed into a full-fledged plan involving reusable bins and a community awareness campaign. Owen marveled at their creativity and determination. He had spent years working with seasoned professionals, but these kids had a raw, unfiltered passion that inspired him in ways he hadn't expected. The day of the fair. The Youth Innovation Fair was held in a sprawling convention center downtown. Bright Futures booth stood out with its colorful decorations and the energy radiating from the kids. Marcus proudly demonstrated his robot to a crowd of curious onlookers, while Tasha guided visitors through her interactive mural. Jaden, shy but determined, explained his recycling plan to a group of local business leaders. Owen stood off to the side, watching with a mixture of pride and awe. The kids had taken ownership of their projects, and their confidence was palpable. He had never felt more fulfilled. Toward the end of the day, a panel of judges visited the booth. The kids presented their projects with enthusiasm, answering questions and showcasing their work. The judges seemed impressed, nodding and taking notes. As the judges walked away, Marcus turned to Owen. "Do you think we'll win?" he asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. Owen crouched down to meet the boy's gaze. "I think you've already won, Marcus," he said. "Look at all the people you've inspired today. That's what matters." Marcus grinned, his nervousness fading. A chance encounter. As the event wound down, Owen noticed a familiar figure walking toward the booth. It was Amina Lawson. She was dressed in a tailored suit, her presence as commanding as ever. "Ms. Lawson," Owen said, straightening up. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I like to keep an eye on projects I'm invested in," she replied, a faint smile playing on her lips. Her eyes scanned the booth, taking in the kids' work. "You've done well, Owen." "It's the kids who've done well," he said quickly. "They're the ones with the ideas and the drive. I just helped a little." Amina raised an eyebrow. "A little? From what I've heard, you've been here every step of the way. That's more than a little." Owen hesitated, unsure of how to respond. For months, he had dreaded her judgment. Now, standing before her, he realized he no longer needed her approval to feel validated. The kids' growth, their excitement, and their achievements were enough. "Thank you," he said simply. Recognition. At the closing ceremony, the winners of the fair were announced. Bright Futures didn't take home the top prize, but they received a special award for creativity and community impact. The kids erupted into cheers, hugging each other and holding their certificates high. As they celebrated, Jaden approached Owen, holding his certificate tightly. "Mr. Carter," he said quietly, "thank you for everything." Owen smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. "You don't need to thank me, Jaden. You earned this." Jaden nodded, a shy smile spreading across his face. For the first time, Owen saw a spark of confidence in the boy's eyes. A new vision. The drive home that night was different. Owen no longer felt the heavy burden of his company's struggles or the fear of failure. Instead, he felt a sense of clarity. The work he had done with the kids at Bright Futures wasn't just about redemption. It was about finding a purpose beyond profit margins. The next morning, he sat at his desk, staring at the stack of reports he had prepared for Amina Lawson. The 6 months were nearly up, but Owen knew his journey wasn't over. He had a new goal now, to integrate the values he had learned at Bright Futures into his company. He envisioned partnerships with community organizations, mentorship programs for young people, and projects that prioritized impact over profit. When the phone rang, Owen picked it up, his voice steady and sure. "Ms. Lawson," he said, "I'd like to discuss a proposal, not just for the orphanage project, but for something bigger." On the other end of the line, Amina smiled. "I'm listening." The legacy of change. Owen Carter stood in the towering glass-walled boardroom of Carter Constructions, gazing at the city skyline. The view had always been a symbol of his success, a testament to the empire he had built from the ground up. But today, it felt different. He was no longer looking at the skyline with a sense of ownership. It was a canvas, a reminder of what could be created for others, not just himself. His phone buzzed on the sleek conference table behind him. He glanced at the screen. It was a reminder of his meeting with Amina Lawson later that day, the culmination of 6 months of grueling personal and professional transformation. But first, there was something he needed to do. The big reveal. At Bright Futures Community Center, the kids were gathered in the main hall, buzzing with excitement. Rachel stood at the front, trying to maintain some semblance of order, though her grin betrayed her own anticipation. Owen entered, carrying a large rolled-up blueprint and a leather-bound folder. The room quieted as he approached the makeshift stage. "Good morning, everyone," Owen began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Before I tell you why I'm here today, I want to thank each and every one of you. These past 6 months have been some of the most challenging and rewarding of my life, and it's because of all of you." The kids clapped and cheered, with Marcus shouting, "You're welcome, Mr. Carter." Owen chuckled. "You've taught me more than I could have ever imagined. about resilience, creativity, and the importance of community. And now, I want to give something back. He unrolled the blueprint on a nearby table, revealing a detailed design for a new building. The kids and staff crowded around, their eyes widening as they took in the image. This, Owen continued, is the future of Bright Futures, a brand new community center with state-of-the-art facilities, larger classrooms, a gym, an art studio, and even a robotics lab. Gasps of surprise and delight filled the room. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes welling with tears. "Owen, this is incredible," she whispered. "It's not just a gift," Owen clarified. "This is a partnership. Carter Constructions is committing to a long-term relationship with Bright Futures and other community organizations like it. We'll provide mentorship programs, internships for older kids, and resources to help you all continue to grow." The kids erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the hall. Marcus grabbed Owen's hand and shook it enthusiastically. "You mean we get a real robot lab?" "Like for real." "For real," Owen confirmed, laughing. Jaden stood quietly off to the side, his certificate from the Innovation Fair clutched tightly in his hands. He approached Owen slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You did this for us." Owen crouched down to meet his gaze. "For you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Because you deserve it. All of you do." Jaden nodded, his eyes shining. For the first time, he wrapped his arms around Owen in a quick but heartfelt hug. It was a moment Owen would carry with him forever. The meeting that changed everything. Later that day, Owen arrived at Sterling Enterprises headquarters. The building was as imposing as ever, its sleek exterior a reflection of the power and influence held within. But Owen no longer felt intimidated. He walked into the boardroom with his head held high, carrying the same leather-bound folder he had shown the kids. Amina Lawson was already seated at the long conference table, her expression calm but curious. She gestured for him to sit, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice as commanding as ever, "your 6 months are up. I trust you have something to show me." Owen nodded, sliding the folder across the table. "Not just something, Ms. Lawson. Everything." Amina opened the folder and began flipping through its contents. Detailed reports outlined his work at Bright Futures, complete with testimonials from staff, parents, and the kids themselves. Photos of the Innovation Fair, the robotics prototype, and the mural showcased the tangible impact of his efforts. But what caught her attention most was the final section. A comprehensive proposal for Carter Construction's new initiative, Building Bridges. "This," Owen explained, "is my vision for the future of my company. Building Bridges will focus on community-driven projects, partnering with organizations like Bright Futures to create spaces that inspire growth and learning. It's not just about construction, it's about connection." Amina leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "And what inspired this change, Mr. Carter?" Owen hesitated for a moment, then spoke with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "The kids," he admitted. "They reminded me of why I started this company in the first place. To build something that lasts, something that matters. For too long, I lost sight of that. But now, I see it clearly." Amina studied him for a long moment before nodding. "You've come a long way, Mr. Carter. And while I believe actions speak louder than words, it's clear that your actions over the past 6 months have spoken volumes." She closed the folder and extended her hand. "Sterling Enterprises will move forward with your company on the orphanage project, and I look forward to seeing how Building Bridges evolves." Relief washed over Owen as he shook her hand. But more than relief, he felt pride. Not for securing the deal, but for earning her trust. The grand opening. Months later, the new Bright Futures Community Center opened its doors. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was a lively affair, attended by families, city officials, and even Amina Lawson. The kids ran through the halls, exploring the new classrooms, gym, and art spaces with unbridled excitement. Marcus dragged Owen into the robotics lab, proudly showing off the upgraded version of his robot. Tasha pointed out the mural she had painted on the wall, which now included a quote she had heard from Owen. "Real success isn't just about what you build, it's about who you help along the way." Jaden stood by the recycling bins he had designed, watching as people used them for the first time. His shy smile grew wider with each successful deposit. As the sun set, Owen stood outside the center, watching the kids and their families celebrate. Amina approached him, her expression softer than usual. "You've created something remarkable here," she said. "I didn't do it alone," Owen replied. "The kids, the staff, the community, they're the real builders." Amina nodded. "Perhaps, but it takes a leader to bring people together and give them the tools they need to succeed. Don't underestimate the role you've played." Owen looked at the bustling center, his heart full. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly living up to his potential, not just as a businessman, but as a person. A legacy of change. In the months and years that followed, Carter Constructions flourished, not just financially, but morally. Building bridges became a cornerstone of the company's mission, leading to partnerships with community organizations across the country. Bright Futures became a model for what could be achieved when businesses and communities work together. And Owen Carter, he never stopped learning, growing, and building. Not just buildings, but bridges between people, ideas, and possibilities. The man who once measured success by dollar signs had discovered a deeper truth. The greatest things you can build are hope, opportunity, and a legacy that lasts.